It's 6:42 a.m. in Trinidad and Tobago, and joining us in studio is the Honourable Fitzgerald Hinds, Minister of National Security, to share with us some updates right here on Now. Good morning, Minister, and welcome.
A very good morning to you, Natasha, your viewers, your listeners around the country, around the globe. A very good morning.
A beautiful morning. It's wonderful to have you in studio with us, and especially to share some of these critical updates. Now, recently you would have met with representatives of the business community and the diplomatic corps as well. Could you share some updates with us on that?
Yes, indeed. Based on soundings we had from the business community, particularly the contractors who engage in road paving, bridge construction, who carry out contracts on behalf of the government for the benefit of the people, and soundings as well from UDCOT, which is a major state implementation organization, and as well the HDC involved in development all over the country. We sensed that there was an increase in crimes perpetrated against these contractors, particularly extortion, demands for money with menaces, arson. When their threats are not enough, they burn the contractors' equipment, they shoot at them. Recently, we had some home invasion situations concerning contractors, and therefore I arranged an interface with them, and we had a very good interface. I had with me the Commissioner of Police, the Chief of Defense Staff, and each of them had respective elements of their team, because we understand that it is not just the physical site. They go to their homes, they make phone calls. So I had all the necessary elements of the law enforcement platform and the Defense Force, because the Defense Force, in its mandate to support the civil power, is out there with us dealing with these issues of national security. So we had a very good interface where they had the opportunity to say what their circumstances, their experiences are. The Commissioner of Police had an opportunity to hear it firsthand with a plethora of very senior officers, and we engaged them, and we are working closely with the contractors, resolving some of the issues, all with one intention: to push back the criminals who feel that, unlike the contractors, they don't have to work. They can come with their dirty little guns, threaten people, bully people, kill people, kidnap people, and just have their money and have their way. And it is our business to ensure that that does not happen in Trinidad and Tobago. I began that meeting by telling them I read a report about another Caribbean country back in some years ago, where the IMF reported that their economy was apparently permanently warped because of that kind of behavior, corruption and that kind of thing in that island. And we don't want that to happen in Trinidad and Tobago. So that was the engagement. Of course, UDCOT had their own experiences, because UDCOT hired these contractors to carry out the government's development program. You find contractors now bidding and putting in a sum to give to criminals. Yes. You're fattening the beast. And we're working together to resolve this. So that really was the engagement. And then, of course, recently, I received contact from the High Commissioner of the UK, Madam Harriet Cross, Her Excellency, and she engaged me, invited me to a meeting where I met 8 other ambassadors and high commissioners, all representing their countries, of course, in Trinidad and Tobago, and they looking on, reading, traumatized by the reportage of crime across the country too, and they had their own concerns about their own security, particularly given that recently in the El Socorro area on Diwali night, I think it was one of the leader of the UNHCR in Trinidad and Tobago was attacked. I had to assure them, of course, that did not appear to be something that was targeted at a diplomat. It was a random crime, and on that occasion, unfortunately, that representative of that organization was the unfortunate victim. It troubled us, as all crimes do, and we engaged them, and I spent about 2.5 to 3 hours with them fielding questions, but also hearing from them how they can assist Trinidad and Tobago, as they have been doing, in terms of training, in terms of the absorption of international best practice, in terms of providing equipment. Recently, we received 16 handheld scanners from the UN Office of Crime, UN ODC, and of course we received recently 4 riverine patrol vessels from our friend the United States. We are in the process of receiving other help. The EU gave us some search and board equipment recently, so they are very willing to help. And I was able to compliment the diplomatic community in Trinidad because from my observation as Minister of National Security, they are indeed very busy, very active, working with us, sharing their experiences, because these things are not unique to Trinidad and Tobago.
Agreed.
It's happening in their countries as well, but we benefit from the collaboration and the sharing, so it was very worthwhile, the engagement.
This is wonderful to hear because, of course, we're not just part of the Caribbean community, we're part of a global community.
Yes.
So seeing that you have that rapport and that we're able to all come together and say, listen, something feels a little bit off, let's see how we can help each other.
Yes.
I also want to echo some of the sentiments that you just mentioned earlier in the conversation, was something that we hear many people on the street saying. We work very hard and it's not fair to see after you work so hard that you are taken advantage of.
Yes.
And it's something that we need to continue to change that narrative in Trinidad and Tobago, that work is something that needs to be done in order to succeed and nip this in the bud, because we have a beautiful Twin Island Republic and we do not want to see it spiral out of control.
You're quite right. I listened to an interview by Lady Montano, Marshall's mother, recently, and the thing that struck me from that interview was her observation, of course, her knowledge and description of Marshall's success as being attributed to hard work with passion that drives that hard work. And I have found from my own experience and from my observation in this world, in this life, hard work and prayer is the formula. You don't have to behave now like a subhuman and come and prey on innocent people and take what they have. You can go out there and work like a man and get it too. So I agree with you. Hard work is the key. And the book says to work is to pray.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
That is
so if you want to
fact.
live like a vulture and prey on people, then, there's a formula to deal with you.
Agreed. Now, speaking about formulas, you've mentioned a lot of meetings since you've joined us this morning. Would you say this is part of your formula or your plan in order to work towards ending crime in Trinidad?
Yes, in April of last year, or this year, I think it was, we had a major crime symposium at the Hyatt where the region, CARICOM, came together, and Dr. Rowley led discussions regarding a new approach to dealing with violence and treating it as a public health issue, and whole of government, whole of society, whole of region, whole of world approach in the same way that we treated COVID-19, which was declared by the World Health Organization a public health concern. We see where children learn from their parents, where they are socialized into environments that are violent, they manifest that. And with that approach, the government of Trinidad and Tobago communicated on a daily basis with the public here. I mean, Minister Dial Singh, the Prime Minister, and the public health officials, Dr. Parasaram and the rest of the team, and they became a household feature for all of us, communicating with you on a daily basis. This crime situation is traumatizing people all over this land. People don't feel safe in their homes, and even non-victims feel traumatized because it's an emotional thing. It's fair.
Yes.
It has affected all of our lives. Not new, not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, but a major problem.
A major problem.
And in that context, I took the decision that I will communicate regularly with the public on all matters touching and concerning crime and violence, so that you can know what's happening, and most of all, know what role you can play. Like, you get your own sanitizer, you wear masks, you're willing to make certain sacrifices, you're willing to help, even it's the international community regionally with CARICOM, and that's the approach. So I've always had an open door policy to individuals, to businesses, to groups, to NGOs, to faith-based organizations, and to communities generally. But I am now proposed to accentuate that in the context of this new approach, seeing violence as a public health issue. Hence the reason for my acceptance of your warm invitation. Today, it gives us an opportunity to demonstrate that national security is not entirely or per se about murders on the headlines and police and crime, but there are other things that are happening that eventually redound to the public safety, the public comfort and well-being that we deserve as citizens of this beautiful republic.
I couldn't agree with you more. Definitely something that is deserved. Peace of mind.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Now, you mentioned the crime symposium, of course. We covered that here on the Now Morning Show as well. But we're speaking more about meetings. And I know that recently you were at the CARICOM meeting for the Ministers of National Security throughout the region. What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, it was really worth our while because it was CARICOM that gathered at the same crime symposium of which you just spoke. And out of that, we took the decision that we had to find a roadmap, a pathway out of this conundrum with these illegal firearms, military type, using military-grade ammunition, 5.56, 7.62, and the inflows into the region, including Trinidad and Tobago. We estimate that there are thousands of illegal guns in this place, and that they are largely coming from the United States, where guns are manufactured like biscuits on a daily basis. And they are sold legally across the United States, but they enter our domain in the region and creating havoc here. I mean, you look at crime scenes here now, you see 50-something spent shells, 94 spent shells, 5.56 and 7.62. That is military, that is for warfare. And that is what is happening in the community. So we designed a roadmap, and every one of us in CARICOM is under that agreement intended to demonstrate what we are doing, how we are doing it, collaborating with each other, collaborating with our friends. At that meeting, we had the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms unit of the Defense Force, the Homeland Security team, their border security team, because you're talking about cross-border issues. This gun inflow here is a transnational business and crime. We relate to the government of the U.S. So we went to St. Lucia last week or week before, and we had 3 days. First day we dealt with this roadmap, and I was able to report that Trinidad and Tobago is 91% in progress with developing our national action plan as each country is supposed to design. And we are about 91% there, and we are on the cusp of delivering ours. And they were rather happy to know this. We are ahead of the game in the region in this regard. We talked more about this roadmap. We worked with our American friends and others, and that was day one of this 3-day engagement in St. Lucia. On day two, well, I don't know if you recall, but we had the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which was implemented by the United States for the Caribbean after the events in 1984, some upheaval in Grenada, you know, and this is a program that exists since then, where they lend support and in this collaborative mode with the region. So we engage with the United States on the CBSI, the Caribbean Security Basin Initiative, CBSI, Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, and we engaged on day 2 with the U.S. on that. And on day 3, we had our regular meeting of the Ministers of National Security of the entirety of CARICOM, and of course I participated in that. That was largely, again, some of these issues about what we are doing, supporting each other, but it also had to do with settling the leadership for the next period, and of course the budget for CARICOM Impacts, which is the security platform for CARICOM, working with the heads of government in order to make and to keep this region a zone of peace and safety as it now is. So those were the engagements, very useful engagements, and we participated lavishly in every one of them.
It's wonderful to hear this. You know, one of the trends that we've noticed here on Now, when we have conversations about where Trinidad and Tobago is, where Trinidad and Tobago is going, is many times we are always in the top running when it comes to getting plans in place, getting those plans implemented. So to hear this definitely is going to be able to allay some of the concerns that many do have. And you mentioned specifically that this is a transnational business when it comes to arms, and also mentioned that, yes, there is an estimate that there are thousands of these in Trinidad and Tobago alone. So to see the relationships building and coming together, whether it's here on the ground with the commissioners, whether it's out there on the wider scale, is definitely something that we can all, I'm not going to say 100% allay fears, because as you mentioned, it's so true, there is that emotional trauma that comes with it, but it's something that we know, all right, there is a plan in place, and this is something that we are going to see roll out over time.
Yeah, you're right. Not one of these bullets or these firearms are manufactured in Trinidad and Tobago, at least until recent times, where we discovered that using 3D printers, there are persons manufacturing parts and weapons all over the world, including in Trinidad and Tobago. So recently you would have seen the Transnational Organized Crime Unit of Trinidad and Tobago and other elements of law enforcement bust a place in this country, arrested a man and his mother because he was there using this new technology, relatively new, to manufacture weapons. And of course, and parts for weapons, serious issue.
Yeah.
So it is quite apart from that transnational in nature. They are largely produced in the United States. So working in collaboration, as I told you, we are now able, when we find a firearm in a crime scene in Trinidad, any village in Trinidad or district, we are now able to find out where it was born, where it was manufactured. Working with the ATF of the United States, they help us in an e-trace, so we could see where it was born, which wholesaler it was sold to, the distributor in the US, where it moved in the US, which citizen purchased it, and then it ended up in Trinidad and Tobago. So with that kind of tracing and intelligence, we are better able to get a handle on the source. And therefore, working with our friends in the US and in other countries, they could get dealing with it at source. Recently, Prime Minister Rowley, Prime Minister Motley, the CARICOM leaders demanded a sidebar meeting with President Biden when they met at Los Angeles at the summit of the Americas. And they managed to get President Biden to agree that there is something that he as president could do, should do, in dealing with the gun manufacturers who manufacture and sell guns legally, but they end up creating mayhem in Port of Spain and in Kingston and in Castries. Imagine little St. Lucia, idyllic, beautiful. 74 murders reported for the year, including 5 one Sunday evening in a quiet village in St. Lucia. It's mayhem.
It is completely.
So we are now working with them and dealing with it. So you are quite right. It's very transnational, and we are collaborating in order to do it. And I wanted you, the public, to understand that the headlines are traumatic. That's the result. But it has its origins. Talking about origins, recently we got our first conviction for human trafficking. The origin of that was an advertisement in a daily newspaper. And the young lady, 16 years, responded to it. And the story now is well known. And therefore, in that context, the media, families, parents, everyone treating it as a public health concern could see how we could play a part in resolving the problem that we face with crime in Trinidad and Tobago.
You know, Minister Hinds, we need to have you back on the show. I wish we could talk more about this, because there is so much that's going on in Trinidad and Tobago and the region, and it's something that we can all work towards together to bring an end to. Thank you so much for being here.
I thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure, and we hope to have you on again soon. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good Christmas.
Thank you very warmly. Same to you and all of yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Trinidad and Tobago, the Honourable Fitzgerald Hinds, Minister of National Security, here this morning on Now. Stay tuned. There is a lot more coming up that you definitely do not want to miss.